absolutely.
All right, cool. I was hoping you'd say yes. All right, so anthropologist Jean Lave and Etienne Wegner coined the term community of practice while studying apprenticeship as a learning model. People usually think of apprenticeship as a relationship between a student and a master, but studies of apprenticeship reveal a more complex set of social relationships through which learning takes place, mostly with journeymen and more advanced apprentices. The term community of practice was coined to refer to the community that acts as a living curriculum for the apprentice. So the discussion we want to have now is around what we believe is the value of community practice. And in specific, to be specific, the practitioners collective, which here at Project Nexus, we are in the process of building and growing. In reference to the practitioners collective in particular, how do you see some of these things playing out, the living curriculum and the value of stepping into these things together?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
That one of you is going to answer now. All three of us are going to answer.
Well, I can't help but think about, as we've named these things and we've called them fundamental in the previous conversations, when we talk about community of practice and our practitioners collective, we are collecting and curating people who value these things as well.
Yeah.
So play, being hope-filled, all of the stuff that we've been speaking about. And in doing so, I'm just thinking about a conversation even that we had last night where someone was like, I'm struggling with hope at the moment, though. Is there a place for me with you guys? And our response is, absolutely, if hope is something you're in pursuit of.
Sure.
So when you talk about the community of practice being a living curriculum, that's kind of what I have in my head, is where you learn how to be this kind of a person and leader because of the people that you surround yourself with, which is a classic life principle, right? Like it's something your parents said in high school about like the friends that you have, right? So it's not a new thing.
I'm just working out what they meant when they said that.
It's not a new thing, but it's a really valuable thing.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's for me it's the value. Contemporary culture has convinced us that if we learn a thing, we'll get paid for it and it'll be great and we'll know how to do it and everyone will gather around us. You know what I mean? Like
pretend we know how to do it.
Yeah, but that's not what you're talking about. It's a living curriculum. So you'll learn in community. And I think what that's expressing is that the thing that we think is a thing is not the thing. That learning to play the instrument or draw the picture or learn maths.
The skill.
Yeah, it's a small component of what the thing actually is, which is engaging with others and community and carrying people with you. You see it all the time with singers, especially, right? Well, I know too many singers that are gifted singers. They know how to sing and carry a note, but they don't perform because the thing that they think the thing is not the thing. It's not actually about singing. There's plenty of people that sing a bit average that have huge following because they know how to connect. They're honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They connect with an audience and a community. A community gathers, not because they're great singers per se, but because they can express and all of those intangibles that come from the living curriculum, that being in that community of practice just exposes you to it all the time. Whereas if you're isolated, you just learn a thing and do it over here, it's not the same thing. It just isn't.
And I also think particularly when we're speaking about innovative leaders.
Yeah.
When you are in a place and you see something and you're passionate about doing something that is new, that is inherently a lonely thing, and the value of then having people around you as you pursue innovation and as you're like, no, seriously, you guys, like the people that are around you and that you love and you want to bring with you who are struggling with it, because as we talked about with the Nexus model, that tension, that paradigm paralysis, when you are an innovator in that context, community becomes like immensely important, and a lack of community does as well. And that's why, you know, when we interview people
Yeah.
for Incubate, or when we're talking to people about what it is, and something that we make sure people understand is you're stepping into a community and these are the sorts of things that we care about together, and
Yeah.
this is what we will be for each other. That moment is when we see the most response from the person we're speaking to, and it's an emotional response.
Yeah.
Like, we get tears when we name this as a possibility. People get emotional because innovative people, I think, can get used to isolation, and they actually just think, because of who I am, this is the life I'm going to live. And we say something else exists and we would love for you to be a part of it. Like, that elicits an emotional response and it's poignant and it's telling that they are like, what? That's something I released hope for as an innovative person.
Because if you do all the things that we've been talking about in this series of videos, so like play, slow down, the innovation, theology of innovation, and if you do that in community, we're not promising that the community of practice gets the thing that you're about to do, the new
exact
thing.
thing.
That's not
Yeah,
what we're promising. Because what we hear and what I experience a lot is, I don't understand that thing that you're trying to do, but I get why you want to try and do it. And that's the powerful part of the community of practice, is that you've got enough relationship with others that when you go to do the thing, they go, we'll encourage you to keep going with that, even though I've got not the first clue about what it is you're actually trying to do. But that's a different form of support to people that are sort of with you or working on it with you. But it's very powerful in terms of a community that is wanting to see it happen, even though they don't quite get it.
The thing itself.
Well, I think that's the definition of, so, some people may say, well, I'm already surrounded by a bunch of people. I have people, I have a community.
Which is great.
Which is great. And that's a good thing. We're not asking you to step out of that and move away and not talk to those people. But it is the nature of the Practitioners Collective, where you are in a group of people who are also on the journey of trying to do their thing. That it is the gathering principle of the community of practice is around the idea that we are all headlong heading towards the thing that we are passionate about, we are compelled about, we'd like to see happen in the world, and we believe God's doing in the world. There's a gathering principle that holds us together, even though there is diversity, even though we have people in our community from all over Australia, from top end of Western Australia to CBD of Melbourne, to Perth, to Sunshine Coast, to Hobart, to in so many different contexts, and doing so many different activities, working with all sorts of different people, and almost to the point where none of them are the same. And by definition, they will never be exactly the same. But they're even, there's a variety there. So you would think, but why are they in a community together? Because the gathering principle is the piece that matters. So your gathering principle with your current community may just be you grew up together in the same area, or you go to the same church, or you work together, and they're all fine, but they're not the same as a gathering principle that actually says the glue, the piece that holds us together, and the commitment we're making to each other is actually to stand next to each other as we pursue the new thing. So permission becomes the entirety of one of the values of the community. That courage becomes one of the pillars of the community. Safety, a trust. We are all committed to being authentic in this place, and not just promoting things to make ourselves feel good or
especially if you've been
ourselves.
from communities where you've not been prepared to be vulnerable with others. This is a safer place to be vulnerable in that sense.
And it's not just people who will tolerate Richard's just quirky, and he's like, that's okay. We love you
I don't get the
anyway.
quirky word. I get the what the heck is Richard talking about?
Okay,
That's
Michael's
what I get,
quirky. But it's not just that. It's people who are like excited by the new thing you're doing, can identify with the heart that you have. And it kind of transcends the actual thing that you're doing, like you mentioned.
And we're all
before.
going to be at different stages of all of these fundamental things we've talked about at different times, right? There'll be periods of our year where we are not struggling with hope. We are just that is real for us. But there'll be people in our collective who that is right now. That's the piece that's struggle. And this is where the living curriculum is. We are as people the living curriculum. So now I'm in proximity with someone who I know and trust, who is actually able to lead hope in the midst of this community.
Yeah.
And they understand what I'm trying to do and what I have a heart to do.
Yeah.
And so the importance of the community for us is almost, well, it's not almost, it is the most important element
Yeah.
of what Project Nexus is heading towards.
Totally, because it's identity. It's not identity in the community, but it's, for me, it's another step of what we've just discussed, and that is that we have a heart to do something, but that's not why the community of practice gathers to support each other. The community of practice gathers to support each other because we see the people, the person trying to do it. We're not so much supporting the idea, because the idea may work, it may not.
It may change.
Yeah, it may change. So yes, we're cheering that current expression of the person, but we're actually cheering on the person.
Yes, absolutely.
So when we gather, we don't need to know all the ins and outs of the thing that they care about. We just need to know them. And that's what the community, like a great community of practice, sees each other, knows them deeply, cheers them on no matter what. Not.
Well, no, you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
You
But can
mean
we-
that. No, you do actually mean that.
Sure.
And because that means standing next to people in the midst of things being successful or being challenging or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it is no matter what.
Yeah.
But
Like, I do agree.
But there's another layer to this, which is accountability.
Yes.
And maybe that's the
Yeah,
hesitancy
that was the,
there.
yeah,
That's the
that's the
hesitancy.
word.
Yeah,
Yep.
so talk about that then.
Well, yeah,
No,
we
I don't want to.
No, but I can't. But again, people know that's the goal of the community of practice. That is literally the living curriculum, that
Yeah.
I want you to learn these things, and at the moment you're not learning them like as you could.
Right.
So the accountability is like, keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Keep pursuing it. Don't settle for that. I heard a story recently where, who was that? Anyway, they were putting up a fence and he bent the nail a little bit. He was doing it with his dad and bent the nail a little bit and was about to whack the bent nail into it because it's just a fence. And his dad came up to him and goes, "Are you going to be okay with that when we paint it later on? You're just going to paint over the top of that bent nail?" And he goes, "No one will see it." He goes, "But you will see it. Are you okay with that?" He goes, "No, I guess not." And then pulled it out. And,
Right.
But he said that's a principle for life then. And this is the community of practice. In that instance, the community of practice is him and his dad.
Yeah.
But then that accountability of like, are you sure you're good with that? It wasn't, you need to pull it out.
Right.
It was, are you sure you're
You.
okay
So it's
with
not
that?
an external
Yes.
judgment.
Yes.
It's
No.
accountability to your own values.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
People who
yeah.
know what you care about and
Yeah.
you've named what's important to you and they're
Yeah.
going, there's a dissonance here. Not like, I don't think that's,
Yeah. yeah.
but like, you
That's
don't.
not the right way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that you think that's not the right
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Which you do a lot. Thank you.
It went from accusing you of something to thanking you of something. Where then I think,
My face just went, what?
yeah. But one of the key pieces then we talk in the Practice Collective is welcoming accountability.
Yeah.
Because I think the
That's-
posture of it
yeah,
is
totally.
the posture of it is important. So
Yeah.
Right. It's not intrusive.
No, so accountability is one thing. You can sign up and reluctantly be held accountable to something.
Yeah. People have a
And be
checklist and just sit there.
be accountable to
Yeah.
something arbitrary or
Yeah.
like to something someone else has set.
Yeah.
So here are your KPIs or here are your whatever's.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to keep you accountable to what we think is important.
Yeah.
What you're not saying.
Yes, correct.
Where it's a voluntary welcoming of accountability.
Yeah.
That she
Yeah.
says, okay, I care about myself and the thing that I'm passionate about enough.
And I trust you.
And I trust you to step into a place where I ask you and give you permission to keep me accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You noticed my deep breath there.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's
Because you're being vulnerable
that's
again.
a big step that not a lot
Yeah.
of people are brave enough to do sometimes. Right? I understand why, right? That's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Because
It
you'll
is-
almost certainly own in that moment the things that you notice that are getting in the way. So,
Yeah, that's right.
because you're being asked to be held accountable to not just a good outcome, but potentially a negative outcome, and to ask me questions why that didn't happen. Yeah.
And that takes discipline. All of what we're talking about takes discipline and routine,
Yeah.
right? Especially as people, I think a lot of the leaders we work with and even us ourselves are present where we are. And to have a consistent group of people who are this kind of living curriculum. So not just the people that we find ourselves with who we're trying to innovate amongst and
Yeah.
maybe who don't get it, but doing this and being surrounded, choosing to have these conversations of accountability and celebration and whatever it may be, this takes discipline. And as innovators in the routine of that, that's something that we name because we know sometimes it's not the first thing that we choose to do because we're so busy doing the thing where we're planted and, you know.
And look, the power of the community being outside of your context is what that perspective, that ability to have those people. Like, let's look at the people we already have. There's no way they ever meet each other apart from being part of Nexus.
For sure.
Like, like, think of the faces and names.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They are not, one, bumping into each other,
No.
and two, they are not speaking into each other's lives the way they are without this process and this community.
No, I mean,
of
I have faces
existing.
in my mind that I'm like, not even just because of proximity, but they're doing the thing.
Yeah.
You know what? Like they are like so fully immersed in their cause that they wouldn't have the time or they wouldn't make the time.
And they may not be vulnerable enough to do it as well, like without it. Like,
Yeah.
Because you think about, there's a live example today. We won't name the live example, but they're doing something very vulnerable and very out there, and it's a lot on the line.
Yeah.
But because there's a community of practice, because there's a community of practice around them, this afternoon there will be a group like us that will either lament with them, will actively join with them if it's gone bad, and go through a process of lament. So we're a community. And if it goes really well, we'll celebrate with them. We're not physically going to be in the same spot, but we'll probably have a drink and take a photo of it and send it to them. Because we want to acknowledge that we're with them.
Yeah.
And what they do, we do.
And the cool thing is they actually know that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the interconnectedness that we we're talking about in an earlier video, that what affects one of us now affects all of us.
Absolutely.
And the more that we all, not so much succeed, but the more that we're honest and play and be vulnerable and get out into the world and attempt these things and be us as our identity. It's not so much about getting it right or wrong, but the more that some of us do that, the more all of us do it, and the more all of us do it, it's just such an exponential thing, isn't it? Like it just grows so quickly.
And the flavor of that community continues to change every year with every single new person that comes in. Right?
For sure.
Because it is not a program. It is not a curriculum in that sense because it's a people.
Yeah.
The learning and the opportunities to learn grow every year because of the variety of people that arrive with so many different backgrounds, so many different leadership experiences, so many different life experiences, living in so many different contexts, seeing so many different needs. Like we learn things every day by the people who are in the community that I'd never have known that. You know, I wouldn't have seen that. I wouldn't have cared about that. But I understand why you want to commit your entire life to this.
Yeah.
Which is really, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And it is the clear difference with some contemporary education models where you come to a class, you learn some material, and then you don't really connect, especially if it's online now, you don't really connect with others. And then you're out and you've got content, you've got some learning. There's no community around you though.
Right.
And then it's hard to find people that are going to join with you to do the community part of the practice, because you're out there to do something, to practice a thing.
Sure.
There's no community around you to do it. And that becomes it's really easy in a contemporary setting now to become very isolated in these modes.
Well, let's be honest. Look, it's why most educational institutions try really, really hard to run alumni programs.
Sure.
Because they're desperate to stay connected or keep people connected, but it's a bit of an afterthought, right? Because actually the premise of the educational model is not set up to connect people.
Yeah.
It's set up for individuals to go through, survive, learn some skills, and then fend for themselves out in the marketplace. Then when they get out in the marketplace, they may collaborate, but they sometimes collaborate a little bit as an arm's distance because it's all a little bit kind of, well, I've just got to make sure I'm covered off. The other problem with most educational institutions is that, let's say 95% of people who go through courses, whether they actually got it or not, we don't know, kind of thing. It's just there's drop-off rate, right? And
But the focus is on learning content,
focus
not
on
on
learning
community.
You know, they
content,
did
right?
the
Not on
assignments.
community.
So I've told you something. Can you say it back to me?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Good. There's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
but the difference being for us is that that's not the process. The process is people, application, change, and they actually are the thing of value at the end. And so one of our core values is, I like the word retention, but one of our core values is that people who come through Incubate stay.
Sustained connection.
Where's the
yeah.
end
It's a much better word.
It's the end of that
But
quote,
yeah.
I forget how it was
And
phrased.
here,
Yeah.
let me go. I got it right. The term community practice was coined to refer to the community that acts as a living curriculum for the
Living
practice.
curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about learning it once.
No, it's
an
ongoing.
ongoing.
Doesn't stop.
And you'll learn different things in different ways.
You don't
because
graduate.
Yeah. And you know that you're relying on the community.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time learn, done and dusted.
Yeah.
It's I rely on this
Yeah.
community and I will continue to rely on this community forever.
Yeah.
But that sounds somewhat heavy as you say it out loud, that I rely on a community of people, because communities change. Of course they do. But at the same time, is there another way to do it?
Well, yeah. And look, someone
Is
might
it-
hear that and go, that sounds codependent and needy and blah, blah, blah. No, you rely on it because it's of value to you. You don't rely on it because it's a crutch or because it's something you're just used to doing or you think you should do or you have to do. It's completely on
we
you
not-
to decide.
We're not geared that way to
rely
be
on
in
each other?
community and rely on each other.
I would hope so.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Like
We
I
are.
am. And I'm an introvert. So I have had periods of my life where I've not wanted to be around people just because of other pressures. And that has not gone so well for me. Because as much of an introvert as I am, a good community of practice is still a safe place for me to come to and talk with others about it because I know them well. There's deep connection.
Yeah.
I mean, that changes for an introvert. That deep connection means that the community is somewhere that gives value, even in the having to be around others, wanting
It makes
to be around.
it worth it.
Yeah. Well, look, I get struck by my wife uses the term. I know you guys know that she uses the term "alone together." It's one of the and I think that for me is a good way of explaining that we are off there doing things on our own, often like charging into the new areas and trying new things, but we don't have to be fully alone. That the community of practice enables us to have a togetherness with a bunch of people who are in our corner.
Yeah.
Because alone is dangerous. It actually is.
Yeah. Alone is unsustainable, number one, and it is probably dangerous as well.
And like you said before, it's not to the exclusion of then the people that you actually
Or your team,
physically are with,
your community, it doesn't replace it.
No, but it helps sustain because you can connect over, as we spoke about at the beginning, the things that set you apart at times.
Right.
You know?
Well, because the point, the point and focus isn't the community practice. The focus and the point is you in context doing your thing with your people. That's the focus. What the community practice is it a way to continue to sustain that. But by sometimes it's encouraged that people need to remove themselves to come and join something different to get what they need.
Yeah.
That is not what this is. It's no, stay exactly where you are, but be connected with people who can help you continue to stay where you are.
Because if that's an old model, and it didn't replace the town. Like, it's not saying it's a community of the town.
No.
And that's the living curriculum. It's saying that the community of practice is the living curriculum. So you have your town that you have
need
a
to be a
community.
blacksmith in a town, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But to be in a network of other blacksmiths that learn how to do apply their trade and their passion.
Exactly.
So the town has a blacksmith is the model.
Yeah. And you don't replace the town community with the
No,
blacksmith
because it would be
community
dumb if you then moved into a town where everybody was a blacksmith. That would be
Then you wouldn't be
particularly
needed.
weird town.
It'd be
I
tough.
Yeah.
imagine. That'd be a tough,
No, but
tough town.
then you would become inconsequential at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no point. Yeah.
But you would also then be in a different kind of bubble, which is unhelpful, right?
Yeah.
And so that is, you're right. That is that age-old model. One of our board members says that he thinks that Project Nexus is trying to do something fundamentally new, and at the same time something deeply old.
Yeah.
like it's like a refreshed version of something that is actually a long-term process, which has proven to work over many, many, many generations. But it's a we're trying to apply that in a fundamentally new way. And I think he's right.
Yeah, as soon as you look in history, you can see it. Like I've been to some Italian towns, like say Venice. They're known for glass.
Yeah.
They're not known for glass because they taught it well or something like that. They're known because they had strong communities of practice, many communities of practice within the city.
Yeah.
Same with Florence.
Sure.
Artists doing different things in different places, but that community of practice that pushes each other to get better, that has a little bit of competition, that excellence, the drive for excellence, the community that can support them, and makes a difference. They have that for a moment, and maybe then they lose sight of the value of the community of practice, and then it disappears. And perhaps today, Venice and Florence aren't actually living up to that heritage of what they had before, because not because the skills have gone or because that has gone, but because the community of practice has gone.
Well, it was undoubtedly a community practice of artists and craftsmen for many for generations. And in the same way, in the 60s, we had all sorts of communities of practice of musicians constantly playing and learning and writing together and encouraging each other to do their thing, but then to go out and do their thing, you know. And I think these groupings of people who are set to work towards their thing, but doing it in connection with others that will stand next to them and continue to encourage them to step forward, I think is an age-old model. And I think our cultural set at the moment is we are geared towards individualism. We're geared towards, well, I've just got to sort it out by myself, and I've got to compete with everybody else, and I've got to kind of learn everything myself, and I've got to, and I think there is value in us readdressing the idea that we can be better together and we can be more sustainable together.
And that it's not an accident. Community of practice doesn't come by accident. It comes around by intentionality and people understanding what it means to gather in that community.
Well, it'll be as strong or as weak as its components.
Yeah.
I once worked for an organisation where a staff member would say to me, our organisation, say this organisation name is really bad at this, and it's really bad at this, and it's not very good at this. And I would say, who is this third person that you speak of?
It's the mouse in his pocket.
I'm like, the organisation is us. Like, so when you say this isn't very good at this, you are saying we are not very good at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the implication is, what should we do better? I'm not saying you're wrong, but stop blaming a third party non-existent entity. Like, we will be better together if we all lean in. In the same way, the community of practice will be as good or as weak as its component members. If everybody is in and participating and involved and leaning on each other and offering themselves up to support others, it will be strong.
Yeah.
And so it does, which is why it's practitioners. It's not just learners, right? It's I'm a doer. I'm actually leaning in. I'm participating. I want to be active. I want this. I want to give people permission to help me, and I want to help others. And the strength then comes from that. But it is intentional.
Yeah.
It will not just happen as a byproduct of just us saying it exists.
Yeah.
And I also think particularly, I mean, you spoke about culture being highly individualistic and needing to come together and recognize the value in that. But I think when we do that, there also is an acknowledgement that we're not homogenous. And so to
absolutely.
that, I'm obviously thinking from a different angle here going, there's also something that is not as individualistic in Australian culture when it comes to things like tall poppy, where I think our innovators do battle that. And so there's something about, yes, we come together, but we also honor each other's differences in a way that maybe doesn't happen when we are embedded in our communities.
Don't misinterpret unity for uniformity.
Yes.
Would be my concept here.
Absolutely.
Do not misinterpret that being together means you lose your
same.
agency and you use your individual sense of who you are, what you care about, and the thing that you want to go after.
Because that is something that is valued in some Australian cultures.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So we want to maintain community, but also the individualism of
I'm not knocking personal vision,
Yes.
personal thing. Like, it's all about the individual for us ultimately, right? Which is the individual in community.
But allowing each other and giving each other permission to be that individual in a community, and we leave room for Michael to care about what he cares about and share it with us.
Bubble baths.
And
Yeah.
talk to us about his bubble baths, just not in too much detail. And you know what I mean?
I hope people have watched that last video before this one.
That's,
yeah.
that's where the vulnerability and starting with the I statements counts,
Right.
which is connected to what you were saying with that person was saying it was the you or the we or the, you know,
we
it's
should.
emotionally distant comments.
Yeah.
But so it starts with us being honest,
We're
vulnerable.
not.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's important to name because
Yeah.
you may
Yeah.
experience what it feels like to just be like you're one of us when
Yeah.
you don't feel as a person who's thinking, but wait, but my heart is to do this. That's not what your heart is to do yet. I want it for you, but I feel a little bit detached from you. You're willing to welcome me in, but it's important to name that
that's good.
we're saying don't just come and be welcomed in, but be empowered to
yourself.
stand tall poppy. Can we all be tall poppies? I guess then we're all the same height, but you know what I mean? Like, come and be who you are, but do it with us.
Yeah. It's good.
So it's, I think, safe to say the final thing to wrap this conversation up is the pathway into our practitioners collective is through Incubate.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason for that is we believe the 6-month process of Incubate, that the work that is done there, we believe it is so fundamental for each of our leaders and our participants
Yeah.
that is the gateway in. And once you've been through the Incubate process with us, we welcome you in and come and join this ever expanding community. But that is the process. So
It's the apprenticeship in sort of thing.
it is the
we're not-
beginning of that apprenticeship model.
Because the community of practice isn't driving an outcome. You be you, but we need you to be you when you join.
Yeah.
And Incubate is allowing you to be you in
to
that
clarify
sense,
some and do that work.
helping you
right?
to be you, supporting you to be
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hopefully from some of these sparking conversations, people have come to a point where they might be considering, all right, well, we told
How
you to do
could they
something
not
about that.
after listening to us?
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.